Okay, so here's another example where we can point to a single value of x, so we can isolate it by reversing order of operations. A few more steps involved here, so let's write down our order of operations tree. We're going to go bottom up to isolate. So first we have to add or subtract. So let me rewrite this up here, how about? So first thing we're going to do is subtract 16 from both sides, which gives me 2x squared equals 64. So we check off that step. Now multiply or divide. So I'll divide each side through by 2. So I cancel the 2's, and I end up with x squared equals 32. And then finally we get up to exponents. So I'm going to square root both sides. So if I square root both sides, remember I've got to put my plus or minus, and then the square root of 32. Well, what's the biggest perfect square that divides into 32? That'd be 16. So this looks like plus or minus the square root of 16. You put the perfect square first. 32 is 16 times 2. So we get the square root of 16 times the square root of 2. And we put the square root of 16 first because that becomes a 4. So we get x equals plus or minus 4 radical 2. Okay, and so that's what we'd enter. It says to separate your answers with a comma. So we do 4 radical 2, comma, negative 4 radical 2. Okay? Okay, what about okay, what about something like this? Okay, so same kind of a thing, right? We can point to a single x, so we can isolate it by reversing standard order of operations. Okay, so first we add or subtract. I'll rewrite it. So we'll go ahead and add 18 to both sides. So that gives us 2x squared equals negative 196. Excuse me. So now I multiply, divide, so I divide by 2. And I get x squared equals, what's that going to give me? Negative 98. Okay? So now we want to simplify by square rooting both sides. We get to the exponent stage. And so we get x equals plus or minus the square root of negative 98. Let's come back to this page for a second. So I'm going to do this. Oh, never mind. So I don't have that available. Okay, so we've got to simplify the square root of negative 98. So there's going to be two parts of this that we've got to deal with. Okay, one part is this negative inside the radical. So remember that whenever we have something like the square root of negative 98, there's a negative number in there. Technically what we're going to do is we're going to break this up into the square root of negative 1 times the square root of positive 98. And the square root of negative 1 is what we call I. So we don't have to show that step specifically. We just know that when we see a negative inside the radical, that becomes an I outside the radical. And now we just have to simplify the square root of 98. So if we think about our perfect square factors, perfect square factors of 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, 100. 98 doesn't fall in our list, so we'll start with half of 98, which is 49. Okay, so we can see then that this is going to become I plus or minus I times the square root of 49, which we'll circle and put first because that's the perfect square factor, and 98 is 49 times 2. So the square root of 98 becomes the square root of 49 times the square root of 2. So our final answers look like plus or minus the square root of 49 is 7. We've got our I, and then we got a square root of 2. The order is really unimportant. It doesn't matter what order where you put the I in your answer. So I'd get positive 7I radical 2 and negative 7I radical 2. Okay?